Alright, so where to start? I'm currently in high school, a rising junior at the moment. This event happened when I was a freshman. I live about an hour or so walk away from my school, and although I normally take the bus when it was around a comfortable temperature, I would normally wake up a bit earlier than normal and walk to school. I want to go on the record to say that I'm not crazy for wanting to walk to school. I actually have a reason. When I was a bit younger, I was in a bus wreck. I think I'm pretty lucky I didn't get hurt, because one girl actually got thrown to the front of the bus when it happened. Kids, listen to your bus driver when they say stay in your seat. It's actually for your safety. Anyway, after the wreck, being on buses freaked me out a good bit. I'll start shaking and crying and overall freaking out. So that's what leads me to walk when I can. So onto the story. This was one of the colder mornings. I was walking, but that didn't bother me, as I honestly prefer being cold to hot. I go through a few back roads on my route to school, and I honestly think that if it wasn't for me noticing the truck early on, I wouldn't be here. I happen to live on an actual main road with constant traffic, but on most days I prefer to walk on the side roads because less traffic means less chances of getting hit, and as you can probably tell, cars freak me out. So anyways, back to the story. I was walking down my usual route, and I noticed a truck behind me that I had previously noticed in front of me about 10 minutes back. I kind of shook it off because not all white trucks are the same white trucks. After that truck continued to follow me for a few minutes, I kind of started freaking out. Understandably, I started to head towards the main road, and thankfully got there successfully. After reaching the main road, the truck drove past me, and I let out the biggest sigh of relief. I figured that was the end of it. But nope, I decided to continue taking the main road to school because the truck did freak me out. I'm so happy I stayed on the main road. At this point I'm walking through a gas station parking lot, still on a busy main road. I'm about 20 minutes from the school, and after this gas station it's all back roads. The white truck whips in front of me, almost hitting me, and scaring the crap out of me. The person driving rolls down the window. It's a man around mid-30s. He looks drugged out, and like he was floating in his socks from how much he was sweating. He asked something along the lines of, "Can I give you a ride to school?" I just looked at him and said, "No." He then asked, "Are you sure?" I replied with yes, "Thank you though," and kept walking. He proceeded to follow me to the school. Thankfully though, I wasn't the only one walking to school, so there were a lot of kids around me at this point. I want to clarify that there were a few good kids to walk with. It's just that most of them live pretty close to the school, so they were not around for the beginning of the walk. Thankfully I made it to school and lived to tell this tale. So creepy drugged out man in white truck, I pray we never meet again. My friend has convinced me to share this here. It needs some backstory, so apologies for the length. I was in a relationship with whom at the time I thought was the perfect man for me. We traveled all the time and discovered a lot of incredible places together. We were madly in love, people could see it. Strangers stopped us in the street to comment on what a radiant couple we were. Just after our 3rd anniversary together, he decided he was sick of living in the suburbs, and we would be moving downtown closer to his business. He asked for my input, so we went back to look at apartments one day. We walked into a dream place, after seeing some really terrible ones. He got down on one knee and said, "I knew you'd love it. It's ours already. Would you marry me?" Of course I said yes. I was bursting with happiness. We moved in straight away. The most blissful 6 months of my life. We planned an awesome wedding. It was a dream. I had just been laid off by my job, so I had plenty of time to be a homemaker, and he appreciated it. He thanked me every morning for his breakfast and clean clothes. He fantasized about our future, children, and all the great things we do together. Then one night he came home from work a different person. He refused to even touch me or look me in the eye. Out of nowhere he said, "This is not what I want for myself. Give me the ring back and leave please." It made no sense, but he wouldn't talk to me. He let me grab a coat, handbag, and money from my drawer, and told me a cab would be ready downstairs. He literally pushed me out the door as I cried and begged for an explanation. I had nowhere to go, but he didn't care. I ended up at my mother's house screaming hysterically. My whole world had collapsed. He refused all my calls, and my possessions were in that apartment, and he didn't give a shit. I had to borrow clothes from my sister, take hand-me-downs from friends, never recovered any of it. The wedding cancellation fell on me too. It didn't take long to find out that he'd been seeing someone else and she became pregnant. They married 3 weeks later after he kicked me out. I fell into a deep depression and lost the will to live. I was skeletally thin, and my mother made me go impatient in work and moving on. It took about 6 months before I could actually start leaving the house and interacting with people again. Then it happened. He started insistently calling and texting me non-stop, 60 texts per day. Can we talk? Can we meet? I just need to see you. I miss you so much. I knew I didn't have the mental strength to face him, so I just ignored it. A barrage of emails followed. He had made a mistake and wanted to get back together. Pick up where we left. What? He was married with a baby on the way. He didn't just get drunk and kiss a stranger, but that was his whole attitude. I didn't reply. He started sending pricey gifts to my mother's house. I asked her to decline all of them, say she didn't know where I was. His emails became deranged rants. This woman had scammed him, forced him, threatened him. He never meant to cheat on me, let alone leave me. He didn't even know how he had ended up marrying her. He actually hated her. I honestly wondered if he was hooked on hard drugs. Then my friend started complaining. My ex, his employee, his brother or cousin had started contacting them to try to set up a surprise meeting with me to fix things. It was unnerving. His friends turned up at my sister's workplace. His cousins followed my mother in a mall. My best friend was being followed constantly. He somehow found out where I was receiving therapy and turned up a few times, demanding information on my treatments and appointments. Police had to be called. I started to fear for my safety and became extremely paranoid. He left me a voicemail detailing how his wife was in labor, but as soon as she was done, he was filing for divorce. Could we please meet that night? He appealed to a lot of our happy memories, and then with no remorse said, "The kid can have my name, but I want nothing to do with him ever. I just want you in our days road tripping. I miss everything about you, all the time." It felt so callous and manipulative. I replied in the text, "Stop looking for me. Stop calling. Just stop. Now go tend to your wife and love your firstborn." This somehow made things worse. Almost everywhere I went, a black van would be waiting for me. I recognized his employee. He looked sadly at me and gestured, "I'm sorry." His instructions were to follow me until he found my new boyfriend, and to convince me to go back. His wife and baby had been kicked out of the apartment and he was waiting for me. He wouldn't give up on us. What? This man was everywhere I went. My mental health declined rapidly. Finally, I decided to get away on a long vacation and save my sanity. I shut down all my social media and took a cab to the airport at midnight. Not 6 hours after landing in Vancouver, I had a string of emails from him demanding to know where I was. He had also flown to Vancouver and would not quit until he had met and got back together. I did not believe it, hoping he wouldn't figure out the rest of my itinerary. I told him I was willing to meet at Stanley Park and arrange a time, which was the next time for my next flight. Left for New Zealand. Things turned for me since then, and I ended up moving here. I'd be lying if I said I didn't do it to get away from him and that shit show he was putting me through. It's been 10 years, and only recently did he tone it down. He stalked me on Twitter for a while, tracked my government job email, came to Auckland twice in hopes of bumming into me, and occasionally still sends me messages regretting the fact that he won't be together forever, that my daughter is not his child, and assuring me that I'll always be the love of his life. Alright dear, but let's not meet. So we live up the street from a liquor store at the time. If you aren't familiar with a liquor store, they're basically little convenience stores with snacks, random shit like toilet paper and candles, and obviously a lot of liquor. They're usually not in nicer middle class areas, and they're places you wouldn't want to be at night. Anyways, my parents worked a lot and weren't home. It was just me, a girl maybe 12 to 13, and my little sister 10 to 11. And it was midday, a weekend or summer, I don't know. We go to this liquor all the time, and the owner there knows us, and is really nice, so I feel really comfortable going there. I've walked there with my friends and family before, but I've never gone alone. My parents told us to never leave the house when we were alone, but my little dumbass really wanted some candy and chips, and decided it would be okay to go, since I've gone many times and I felt comfortable there. It takes less than 10 minutes to walk there and pay for my snacks and everything's good, nothing weird yet. As I'm walking home, I see this guy sitting on a small brick fence. Mostly liquor stores are in a small busy shopping center. This one was in a very small abandoned shopping center, so there was no people walking around. The store was at the corner of basically the entrance to the neighborhoods. At the store, all the neighborhood streets cut off. My house was straight down, and the guy was sitting on the third house on the street, going towards the right. We look at each other for a second, and he jumps off the fence and starts walking towards me. I was a little scared, but didn't want to run and look obvious, but I started to speed a little bit. I can feel this guy behind me following me, and I sense him getting closer. I looked back for a second to make sure, and this guy had a serious determination look on his face. If you've ever seen Get Out, remember that famous scene when the granddaughter started fucking running at him while he's outside smoking? That's the face this guy had, and it terrified me. I'm freaking out now and start walking faster. I cut through my neighbor's lawn to my house, mostly because I wanted to get home already, and because I was seriously worried about this guy knowing where I lived, and thought maybe he would think my neighbor's house was mine instead. Doesn't sound logical, I know, but I was scared and paranoid of him knowing where I lived and following me home. It was just me and my little sister home. My neighbors were outside playing some kind of card game or something and smoking. They did that a lot. These two older ladies, one super old in a wheelchair, and the other was probably her daughter, like middle-aged probably. I kept looking back at this point, so they must have seen I was scared. I run inside, lock the door, and hide behind the couch and peek outside. The window was open, but the blind shut, so I could hear outside. I hear my neighbors yell, "What are you doing?" I couldn't hear him well, but the guy must have said something like, "Going home," or whatever, because my neighbors yell, "You don't live here." He says something I couldn't hear, but she yells at him to get the fuck out of here, and that she's calling the police. He yells something back at her. I can't understand, and he leaves. I messed up, but I promise I'm not a dumb kid. I was always really aware. We lived in a bad area, and I was almost taken, or whatever, at least 3 other times before this happened. I was dumb, and the snacks were not even worth it. I felt so sick and scared, I gave the snacks to my sister and watched out the window for what felt like hours until someone came home. I felt guilty and responsible for her if anything had happened, so I felt I had to be on alert, watching to make sure he did not come back around. What gets me is that this guy did not look like someone who would want to follow a little girl home. He did not look like a pedophile, basically, if that makes sense. He also did not look like someone who would want to rob me. And again, I was a little girl. He couldn't have thought I had money besides some change, so I assume he must have wanted to rob my house, but honestly felt his intentions were worse, and I hate to think about it. He looked young and dressed like a teenager. He could have been as young as 15 or as old as 25. He had one of those faces. It's taught me to never really go off looks when assessing your surroundings for danger. To my amazing neighbors, thank you. We moved a year or 2 after this. We never talked to them, and I never even knew their names, but they still helped me without a single word ever being shared between us. They obviously knew something was up, and when I just walked through the middle of the yard, I probably looked terrified. I don't know what would happen if they did not step in. And to the creepy guy who followed me home, let's not meet again. Well, this is going to be a long post, so apologies for this. Been long-time lurker, figure I'd post this little encounter I had some years ago. For some backstory on me, I'm 5'3", female. I used to have my hair colored in bright colors. At the time of the story, it was bright blue. And at the time of these 2 incidences, I was in my very early 20s. I live in the central part of Texas, born and raised here. It was a little after I first gotten my driver's license when my mom had asked me to run to Walmart in order to pick up a few groceries for dinner. I figured, sure, why not? Plus, I had just gotten paid. Maybe I could buy something for myself as well. Now, usually when I go shopping anywhere, I always have my phone and headphones with me so I can listen to music while I shop. This day, however, I left my phone at home on its charger. Sucks, but whatever. I wasn't gonna take too long to get what I needed. And as I'm walking through the store, grabbing dinner, I start realizing something was off. I couldn't really understand why, but I started feeling like I was being followed. I looked around me as discreetly as I could, and didn't really notice anyone. A few families, some college kids, and then this one guy in a dirty wife beater. I shrugged it off and figured it was just me being paranoid, so I continued on my way. But every so often I get that feeling of being watched. So I'd keep looking around and never saw anything weird, except on my journey into a third aisle, I noticed the guy in the dirty wife beater again. He had some older white guy, maybe mid to late 40s. He had short orange blonde hair and a bit of facial scruff and some sort of facial tic. He looked a little off with the way he was standing and staring. He didn't even have a shopping cart from what I remember, and he just stared at me. I turned back around and figured maybe I was blocking his path. I grabbed my card and started wandering over to where the art supplies were, since I needed a new sketchbook, and I could still feel him following me the entire time. At that point I started getting a little freaked out. I'd never had that happen before, so then I decided to try to lose him by going through different aisles. At first it worked. I decided now would be my time to leave, so I head up to the cashier, pay for everything, and make my way out. Then suddenly, hear someone behind me call out, "Don't leave yet, baby." I look back behind me because I know that comment was directed at me, and lo and behold, the guy in the dirty wife beater. I just ignored him and booked out of the store. As I make it to the car though, I keep hearing him behind me saying things like, "Come back," and "I'm talking to you." Thankfully, I managed to get everything in the car and book it out of the parking lot before he got to me. I was shaking by the time I got home. I thought about telling my parents about what happened, but decided not to. I figured it was a one-of-a-kind thing. Boy, was I wrong. About a few months later, my mom, M, and one of my older sisters, C, went to the same Walmart to do some more grocery shopping. I told no one about the incident for months prior, but I did gain a tendency to carry a pocket knife with me after all times afterwards, just for added safety. So we were walking in, talking about something dumb or about what we were supposed to get, I can't remember, when all of a sudden I look ahead of us and just froze in my steps. Right in front of us was Mr. Dirty Wife Beater, still looking grungy as hell and looking straight at me. M and C had noticed my sudden lack of movement when the guy was walking closer to us, never looking elsewhere besides my face, and starting rambling about my colored hair. "Why do you change your hair? Is it to get men to look at you? 'Cause I'm looking." Those are the words that are still ingrained into my brain. My mom looked at him confused. Same with my sister. I was still in shock and tense with just how uncomfortable I was and how scared I felt. I didn't really know what to do. Thankfully, maybe due to fear, I managed to start power walking ahead of my mom and sister while this guy just kept talking. When I stopped him in the backing aisle, M and C asked me what was that all about. I finally told them, and M started getting concerned, asking me if maybe I should get security involved. For some reason, maybe my anxiety, I decided not to get security involved. I did end up that entire trip looking over my shoulder constantly to make sure we didn't get followed out to the car. So yeah, crazy and or possibly drugged up guy in a wife beater. Let's not meet again. Hey, how's it going guys? It's Jensen. I hope you enjoyed these stories. I'm having a lot of fun doing these, and sorry for the little break. I posted on my social media accounts what had happened to my computer. It's still not 100%, but I've got it working for now. So pretty much the graphics card had taken a shit on me, and I wasn't able to really, do anything with my computer. I know one of the ports isn't working, so I can only use one monitor, and it makes recording a little difficult, as usually I use one monitor to read and then one to see my audio. But I guess we'll just go with this for now until I can get a couple $100 to fix this computer. Anyways, thank you so much for all the support. Drop a comment down below what you'd like to see next or what you thought of these stories. If you want to shoot me an email with any stories, I have that linked in the description field down below, and I'd love to get your stories as soon as I can. You guys are really awesome. I love this community, and have a great night. All right, bye.